right now it stresses me the f out. So here's the thing. I set out to build an instrument. Something unusual, something a bit chaotic. But somewhere between the idea and the actual execution, I discovered that building the thing is only half the battle. The other half was wrestling with my own brain. But hey, out of all of that chaos came this, my Noisebox. And I even got my central idea to work, which is a rotating platform that turns random noises into endless soundscapes. So today I'm going to show you how I built it and also talk about what it really takes to push a creative project through, even when you'd rather do literally anything else. But instead of me rambling forever, let's break down the essential components that will bring this project to life. We start with a hollow shaft, which will be connected to a bearing at the base of the box. On top will be a plexiglass disc that acts as the spinning platform. The setup will be powered by a motor that transfers its rotation through a belt transmission. Now that we've covered the essentials, let's jump right into the assembly. Now, before you ask, why does this design seem like it's intentionally complicated, let me explain the big problem it's solving. The entire structure is hollow, and there's a reason for that. I'm aiming to get contact microphones positioned directly on this rotating platform, which is only possible with a completely hollow design. And that's where this thing comes in. This is a sliding contact that's going to sit inside of the shaft. The sliding contact is the key part of this setup because it allows me to make an electrical connection from something spinning, the platform, to something stationary, which will be the audio output of the Noisebox. You can spin the top and the bottom stays in place. With this, I can keep the audio feed uninterrupted as the platform rotates, which I think is pretty cool, but it also comes with one big trade-off. I can't just slap a motor at the bottom and drive this directly, because that would mean using the center of the shaft, which is exactly where my microphone cables need to come out. That's why I had to get a bit creative with this setup. Now that you know the method behind this madness, let's go back to work and make this happen. The belt needs to stay under tension, so I'm going to use springs to pull the motor away. Alright, quick test. Let's also simulate some resistance on the platform by holding the shaft while it rotates. Okay, and I've noticed right away that the motor wants to turn that way because of the torque that is generated here. So I'm going to build something that prevents the motor from turning here. The next step is integrating the speed controller in the box. Alright then, let's do a quick test. Okay, it looks a little bit wonky, but I think I can adjust that a little bit. Here you can tell how wobbly it really is, but I think that's actually a good thing, because with the wobbliness there comes variance, and I think that variation could be very cool with the sounds, so that's fine. I have cut out and painted this piece. It's the mount for the sound generating arm. That's going to be assembled like that. And with this, you can easily adjust the height wherever you want it to be. I love the sound of those little music boxes. And with this one, you can even put in your own note progressions by stamping them into those paper strips, which is pretty cool. The next addition of tonal sound generators are tuning forks. Can you believe this? Between me sitting there and figuring out how to start and my next recording session, 3 whole months went by. Yeah, I didn't want to believe it either. Now, you probably know, procrastination is basically not doing the thing you need to be doing. But here's why it's sometimes not that easy to detect. Procrastination can show up in sneaky ways, like for example, waiting to feel inspired or distracting yourself with another task that's maybe even entirely unrelated, or just simply avoiding it even though you know it's important for progress. All of these can be procrastination. But here's the truth. In creative work, procrastination isn't the real problem. It's just a reaction. It's a surface symptom of something much deeper. Most of the time, it comes from the false belief that what we want to create just simply isn't going to work, when in reality, there's no evidence for that. So it's just a made-up story that we tell ourselves. So if procrastination is just a reaction and it also feels in that way so passive, what can we do about it? First tip, think better thoughts. Yep, someone's gotta tell you. Instead of thinking in a deterministic and negative way like, I can't achieve this, or I'm not creative enough, I'm not talented enough, or who am I to think that I can be as creative as all of those insanely talented people all around me when clearly I need to learn so much still, is not at all a thing I've said to myself before. Instead, shift your focus back to the end result. Say to yourself, if I stay in this creative process, I know the end result will be amazing. Negative self-talk can be a habit, but so can be positive self-talk. So whenever you catch yourself talking down on you, remind yourself that you envisioned this project to be this cool and exciting, unique project, or just as a way of expressing yourself creatively, and you will get there if you stay in there. Next tip, take control of your environment, and I mean both real and virtual. Attention is the currency of today, and there's a lot of competition for it. So we need to act with intention. We need to limit distractions, limit our access to those cheap dopamine hits inside of our creative space. And for me, that looks like turning on flight mode while I'm working, using apps to cut down my phone's functionality, being very intentional in general with screens around my creative space, and keeping my workbench clean, just to name a few. But take a moment to reflect. What distractions do you need to eliminate from your creative space? And also, distractions love to creep back in when you're not looking, so ask yourself that question from time to time, but especially when you're not making progress. Third tip, split your project into sections. Big projects can feel overwhelming, but when you break them down, you intentionally shift from a holistic to a more strategic way of thinking, and with that, suddenly your big intimidating project becomes just a handful of small fixable problems. This gets you back into the process before you know it. And lastly, start with a small, low-impact task to get the ball rolling. This is your launchpad into the flow state. This shouldn't be your most important task, and that's intentional. It just needs to move you forward a little bit. And once you start, there's a good chance your brain clicks into flow, that state where you're so deep in the process that you don't have to think about your actions anymore. You just know what to do next. Especially in building, but in other projects too, it helps to have a few specialized tools to help you achieve your goals. The same is true for overcoming procrastination. And you know who also is just about to overcome their procrastination? You know, this should have been this fun, interesting little project, but right now it stresses me the f*** out. But taking the first step is always the hardest, so just let's get it over with. The next component of the percussion section is going to be this snare wire, this half snare wire actually. I want it to be mounted like that, and it needs to be controllable though, so the effect of the snare wire is variable. For this I'm going to use a tuning peg and mount the snare wire to the part where the guitar or bass strings would usually go in. Here you can see the tuning peg close up. This is round, which is not good because even when I screw the snare wire to it, it's not going to be very secure. So I'm going to grind one of the sides flat. That should do the trick. So far, the percussion side looks like this. I have mounted the snare wire, I have mounted this metal springy type thing. Here's a leather surface for a bit of surface variety, a small box and a shaker, and a bowl on top where you can put small things into and experiment with the sound. Here's a close-up. And now without anything in there. I've got these parts for a very small kalimba, and I'm eager to hear how it sounds, so let's do that next. I think this one's gotta go. And I think it just moved, so I'm going to move this one outside. Thanks for your visit. Don't come again, please. It's just one of those days. Good enough. With the kalimba done, I think the last addition to the top will be this violin string. This concept is one of my favorites. It's a saw blade combined with a guitar pickup, and you can vary the pitch with the length of the saw blade. In fact, let me show you what I mean. As a kid, I was fascinated by those thunder drums, or also called spring drums, and I remember that I had one with lightning bolts painted on it, which I thought was peak coolness at the time. And honestly, I'm not sure if I've outgrown that. But anyway, the spring drum will be our first addition to the effects section on the right side of the Noisebox. I'm really glad I stayed in there and finished this project at last, because I think it turned out quite cool and there are a lot of sounds to discover, which I'm already excited about for the recording. The download of this instrument will be available with the recording video, so subscribe to be notified. In the meantime, you can grab the Procrastination Stopper poster from buildrecordshare.com to hang in your creative space. If you only take one thing from this video though, let it be this: trust yourself. Only you can finish it your way, and that in itself makes it perfect. Until next time.